because I've never had a chance to have a conversation with people.
Really?
There we go. Cool. Now I think we're like officially live on Facebook and we're on Zoom. So happy Friday evening in Germany. It's a Friday afternoon here in Nashville. So for the first time, I get to spend time with a critic. I think this will be the fun part. So Georgios, I don't want to screw up your last name because it's Greek. It's Charpentides, right?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So I think what we can do is, we'll talk through some stuff, because I was curious, because I got a lot of messages from people saying, oh, well, there's a criticism on Cleanslate. And I think I've always been open to criticism, and especially helping people understand what mechanisms are, what pathways are, how things function, and everybody being a little different. They want a different feel. So let's have some fun. So you've got an astrology background?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I'm an astrologer. So the way I do it, I look at people's natal charts and I try to find out what's going on in their life. Like, why do these things happen to them? Why does their story unfold the way it does? So I give them guidance on that.
When did you get started on that? How'd you figure out that was something that you could identify and things opened up? How long have you been doing that?
Yeah, that started about 2 years ago, I think. So that started by me actually doing something completely different, which was doing a form of somatic experiencing work, where I work with clients directly. I ask them questions about their family history, their traumatic events, accidents, and the relationships with their parents in their childhood. And after that, I do sessions with them in which we do a clearing of their experiences, where I ask them certain questions and we do certain exercises. And after that, I studied astrology, because I could see that what my clients were experiencing, I could see in their chart. Like certain things, the way they were unfolding, you can see it by certain placements, like Chiron, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus. And then I started to study that, and that's how it started, yeah.
And then from a pathway standpoint, because I've got over the last couple of years, we've been able to develop some concepts into, you can say, the removal of what holds on to a lot of the negative emotions, the trauma, the past life trauma that carries through, which is heavy metals, because of mercury, lead, and aluminum being neurotoxic and being positively charged, that a lot of that negative stuff will actually be held on to by the metals in the brain and central nervous system. So the work you have to do comes down to the physical, right, of actually removing those toxins and metals, but also, like you're talking about, the spiritual, the mental, the emotional component, but being able to tie those together. So we can have some fun. So you were introduced to Root how long ago?
About a year ago, I think.
Okay, awesome. And then that was through Harry and Sandy, which I gotta give him a shout out, because it's my boys in the UK.
Yeah, that was through Harry.
Okay.
Through his post, he was continuously posting it, and it was actually my partner, Mitch, who got interested in buying it, and I bought it for him, and then we tried it out.
Okay, how long ago was that?
I think it started in March last year.
Last year?
Yeah.
And how long have you guys been using it?
Yeah, so we tried to extend it as much as possible. We used 2 bottles. We used it until, I think, August or something, yeah.
Hold on, you were able to get 2 bottles out 6 months?
Yeah, we were really like Harry suggested.
One drop.
And we also took
twice a day?
Yeah, like that. And we also, we tried different protocols. We took higher amounts for a certain time, lower amounts for a certain time. and then for some time, nothing. And that's how we tried to figure out how to work out, how to it best, especially during certain protocols, because, even though it's not suggested on your side, but from our experience with heavy metals, you always need to do some intermittent fasting or some kind of food protocol, what you're eating, so your body has an easier time actually grabbing those heavy metals.
It's an interesting part because of the mechanisms that are behind Cleanslate with how basically the cages of the clinoptilolite structures function. So they're their own little molecular sieves, and we've had different practitioners give us different feedback on outcomes with how they're using it. That one is the consistency, because that's crucial. But if you are doing lifestyle changes and tweaking diet, what kind of stuff are you doing? Because it's funny, because from the time that you made your initial post that got a few people's attention, I had other product providers say, hey, they've done some of the same stuff to me as far as reviews. And so you guys have been looking for different ways of different performance, from mushrooms and psychedelics and detoxification and such, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So we're trying different herbs, different supplements. We always try to get the most natural sources, so like whole food sources.
Yeah.
Wild blueberry powder. We tried the other stuff like spirulina and barley grass juice powder. And we also tried amanita.
Yeah.
Which is like a mushroom. And that actually had quite a lot in getting chemicals out. Like, we noticed it immediately after taking it. And when we tried the other protocol where we used a mix of wild blueberry powder with spirulina and barley grass juice, we noticed after using it for about a week, when we started, we felt symptoms of heaviness in areas where we got vaccinated.
Yeah.
For example, I got it on my right shoulder and my left shoulder. I got vaccinated there twice when I was 10 years old. And I could notice it would flare up. It would get inflamed when I was starting to use these supplements. Yeah.
Haven't been vaccinated recently, though, right? With all the chaos in the last 2 years, that hasn't been done.
No, I will not get vaccinated.
Okay, good call. I didn't want to have to get into that conversation. It's like, no, we're not having to go there. No. We've had too many clinical outcomes to have to worry about it. But
yeah, I understand for your clientele. I personally don't care. Like with my clients, I'm just straight up, I don't care.
So what dosage had you been following? Because I think the important part, the consistency, is really crucial with Cleanslate. And what we recommend for people initially is to start with 1 drop in the morning, 1 drop at night, and then people will typically slowly titrate up. But if it's sporadic use, you're going to see a pretty significant variance if you're taking breaks in between with how the body's going to function. But how consistent were you? How long had you used it? And then what were your experiences?
Yeah. So when we first started, we just did the standard protocol that is recommended on the website and the bottle.
So 10 in the morning, 10 at night?
Yes, that's right. So right after waking up, we took those 10 drops.
Yep.
And then before going to sleep, and we did it for about a month.
Okay.
And after that month, we tried doing 5 drops for 1 month. And then after that, we started experimenting, doing it weekly, like 1 week, just 2 drops every day, other week.
Once a day or twice a day?
Sometimes once a day, sometimes twice a day. Okay. But we did it consistently. So when we decided to do 1 drop, we would do it for like 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
And if it's 2 drops, same amount.
Interesting. So in your findings, I don't have the post posted. So what did you guys find, or what were your thoughts?
Yeah. So to be honest, Mitch was really excited, who I was taking it with. he was really like hooked up because he thought he suffered from heavy metal poisoning because, to his own words, he says he has a mild form of autism, which is supposedly linked to these heavy metals. So he wanted to get a remedy. And when we first started out, I actually told him that I don't really want to try it first. So he, in the beginning, took it the first month alone, and only after that month did I took it together with him. And he said he didn't really notice much. And yeah, so he didn't really notice much in effect. I tried it then, and the first experience for me was that it had a strange taste.
Yeah,
Kind of
because of the
reminded
trace
me,
minerals and the vitamin C.
yeah, it kind of reminded me of something synthetic, personally, and I didn't know what that was, so I looked it up, and I looked up online that you're using synthetic vitamin C, ascorbic acid.
Well, ascorbic acid is an extract of vitamin C. So whether you call it vitamin C or ascorbic acid, same.
Yeah,
And
but it's a synthetic form, which is what it
no,
tastes.
it's naturally derived. This is actually a really good point for people because we get lots of questions on, vitamin C sources, vitamin D sources, and with what my wife ends up doing in formulation. So it's really important. I think this is actually a really important point. So if you're looking at vitamin C or vitamin D, every single version of extracted ascorbic acid, vitamin C, vitamin D, you could argue is synthetic because it's all processed,
Yeah.
right? Even if it's naturally derived initially, the process they go through to isolate, to purify is synthesis, right? So the key is really, what quality of source are you getting? And especially with vitamin C. Vitamin C is one of the big ones because there's so many different sources out there that a lot of the vitamin C products on the market are actually loaded with metals. They have heavy metals in them and their quality is terrible. So, and it's the hard part as a manufacturer, but also as a provider, that we have people asking for our third party data, and we're putting out more information than most companies would ever want to provide because of our focus on authenticity and actually providing it, which gives my wife a chance to have a bunch of fun going back to some of our suppliers and going, okay, don't give me just the GMO data, but give me all the DNA tracing of GMOs, which no one does, to say, okay, you might be GMO free here, but are there any points in history of that component that have ever been GMO? And the interesting part when it comes to the synthesis of like C and D, which are the two big ones, is outcomes, right, and quality. And if you're sourcing properly, and whether it's considered synthetic or natural, and like I said, every single the only instance, and I don't even have any in front of me. I don't have a lime in front of me, but I'm gonna grab. Hold on. Gotta have some natural barrier support here. So like natural barrier support, which is the vitamin, the vitamin C, D, and zinc that she created, is a dehydrated liposomal vitamin C, right? So it is the highest echelon of vitamin C you can get on the market. Can't get a better form of C than dehydrated liposomal C. The hard part is people look at it and go, oh, well, it's synthetic. Well, got to go through the process where it's, so the argument is where it starts and where it finishes, right? If we were to take, yeah, it's all in the process. So if you take a lemon, if I could take a lemon or a lime, and I don't have any on my in my little greenhouse I've got here, but if you squeeze a lemon or a lime, you go, okay, I have natural vitamin C along with the rest of it, which goes back to your point of using as natural components as possible, in supplementation. And some of the key ingredients you were talking about are in Relive. And as far as some of the other green aspects, which we can. Have you tried Relive yet?
Mm-mm.
Oh, well, I'll get you. I'll have some sent to you on me so you guys can try this because of what you're talking about. I think it'll blow you away.
Really?
Especially wanting to be on the natural kick.
Thank
But
you.
the key is one, the consistency, but the quality. And you see quality in outcomes. And this is why I was really intrigued to have the conversation to get an idea of where things were coming from. Because if you're, especially with Cleanslate, if you're not consistent, your results are going to vary a little bit. But also if you had 2 people using 10 drops twice a day, you're going to go through a bottle if 2 people are doing it 10 by 2, you can go through it in about 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. One person to go through it in a month. And the Pepsi challenge?
Mm-mm. What is that?
So it's usually the taste test. So I think what would be fun is if we do the Pepsi challenge, and I'll put my money where my mouth is, right? So with what you guys are doing, is Mitch there with you? Are you guys are together? You're in different locations.
No, we're in different locations now.
Okay. You want to be my guinea pig?
Okay.
So here's the bet. We'll do this. So I'll get with Harry and I'll get you a bottle of clean. Have you tried Zero In yet either?
Yes, yeah, we did try it.
How many did you take?
I think we did take 1 package. Yeah.
Like the whole thing?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'm gonna put together the protocols for you guys. Oh, Harry wants to come on. Let's do this. Yeah.
All right.
Hold on. Oh, see, Harry's still in the red light district in the UK.
Hey.
Chilling in the dark.
I have to learn every time.
Good, yes.
Harry, I swear.
Yeah. Have you guys started yet?
Yeah, no, we're rolling right now. What we're going over is we're gonna put together the Pepsi challenge. So what we'll do is I'm gonna put together the protocols because I think we can do some stuff on Messenger because I don't think they've been consistent enough in using some stuff. So what we'll do is I'm gonna get with you guys. I'll send you some points so you can order some stuff on me. I'll need to get your email address, Giorgio. So I'll send you some goodies. And we can do a little challenge with Cleanslate, with the Trinity, Cleanslate, Zero In, Restore. But with what you're talking about from a green standpoint, I'm going to send you some Relive too, because you're going to be blown away by what this stuff does. And it'll be fun because it's.
Have you tried with Harry?
I'm just getting the relived greens into. I ordered them last week. They're taking a while to come, but when they come to the UK, yeah, I've ordered 1 and 2 Zero In, and I've already got Restore and Cleanslate through Sandy. So I've got loads of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. You try everything.
And Harry's had an opportunity to play with Zero In a little bit, and especially with what you're doing from an astrological perspective, the combination of Cleanslate consistently, because the big thing is the decalcification of the pineal gland, but then being able to boost neurotransmission. And I'm not sure how much you're using, but I'll give you guys the protocols and what to follow, and then we can watch what happens. So I think one of the things we can do is document, and whether it's through video or just journal of what process we see every day, and it'll be fun and interesting to see with consistent use what happens.
And as you say, Clayton, 3 Zero In or 4 Zero In one go is an experience that everyone has to try at least once. At least once.
And I it's a conversation I've been having with people the last couple of weeks, and especially if you understand the spirituality that we have and where we're able to go, and like the Harry, the work you're doing, and, it sounds like Georgios, looking at mushrooms, the aspects of endogenous DMT production. And I was watching a couple phenomenal interviews and podcasts on DMT and the conversations around it, but knowing that we produce it endogenously if done properly, but you have to follow the right pathways and you have to clear up those pathways, clean up and decalcify your pineal gland, which we're able to do with Cleanslate really effectively. But then the production of, endogenous dopamine and serotonin. So you get the serotonin converting to melatonin, extra serotonin will then convert to DMT. And I think the key is like we've hit on so many times is the stress that we've all been under the last 2 years. And just you can say the environmental stress that we've been under, how that affects our autonomic nervous system. And our dopamine and serotonin levels were already suppressed because our gut doesn't work the way it's supposed to. But then with this increased stress level, they're pretty much bottomed out. So being able to boost them and get up to a level that is not just great, but to get up to a level where you can be amazing. Some people are afraid of it, right?
Yeah.
And there's a level of greatness that is bestowed upon us when we want it. It's really indescribable. Like I took 4 capsules over the weekend because I was going skydiving from 18,000 feet and I knew I was going to have some nerves. And one of the things that I was talking with Sasha Stone about this earlier this week, and Sasha was saying, one of the things that makes 0N really unique is not only what it does for dopamine and serotonin to make you feel good, but it eliminates fear.
Right. Wow. I didn't even know that. So,
and because if you look at the power of dopamine, that like Georgios, what you're talking about with people that have been, and we've seen now that Sasha talks about it, you've seen this because if you're working with people that are dealing with stressors, post-traumatic stress, past life stress, current stress, boosting neurotransmission is the only way to offset it and overcome it. And because of the stress cycle with cortisol, that it shuts off dopamine and serotonin production. So you can do the spiritual work, but if you're not supplementing that, you're not supporting it, you're going to be lost. So that will be
Clayton, a huge factor in that is the dopamine testosterone connection. They're directly correlated. When dopamine spikes to a ridiculous level, our testosterone, our fearlessness, our fearlessness, manliness goes up.
Absolutely. So it'll be fun to look at those. So Georgios gets to be the critic, but now we're going to put him to work.
Can I ask you a few questions?
Absolutely.
So I had a question. So when I tried to research exactly what's in it, in the ingredients it says silicium dioxide.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mention zeolite.
Correct.
So I tried to figure out why, and I figured out that it's the silicium dioxide from the zeolite.
Correct.
That you're using.
Yeah. So what?
Why do I buy Cleanslate? Why don't I just buy a silicium dioxide supplement instead?
Because they're not the same. So this is the important component. Thank you for that perfect lead in. It's one of the best questions you could have asked. So clinoptilolite naturally, this amazing zeolite crystal, right? Clino is probably the most powerful crystal on the planet. People are pretty familiar with quartz and some of the siblings in the zeolite class, right? Because quartz is a zeolite. Hey man, I hardly ever get to do this.
You guys are gonna make it, Chris.
I got my hardware. I got my organite. I got my quartz. I got all my good stuff. I got my bear claws. But the key is understanding biochemistry as well as just crystals and raws, right? And we're really fortunate because my wife is a biotech savant and has a background in nanotechnology and bioscience engineering, and she's created human monoclonal antibodies. She's done cloning and at the highest levels of biotech and pharma, and she understands how that world works. And I'll use an analogy for you in a second. But clinoptilolite is in different forms. You have sodium aluminosilicates, you have magnesium aluminosilicates. You know, its molecular structure will vary based on where it was formed in the environment. The sodium aluminosilicates are some of the most abundant and best available, you know, for what we're doing. So like we were going over the vitamin C, source is crucial. We are fortunate to sole source from the purest mine that we found available on the planet, which is 97% pure clino, 3% bentonite, which is a sibling, and most people are familiar with bentonite because it's a clay and it's another zeolite. But it's 97% clino, 3% bentonite. So then you have to look at the molecular structure of this sodium aluminosilicate, right? And you look at the three components: sodium, aluminum, silica. Silica being the operative word. You have to get into some of the science of clinoptilolite to understand what this amazing crystal is truly capable of. And no one's ever done this besides us, because no one's been able to unlock what we're doing. So bioavailable silica is arguably, well, I won't say arguably, one of the most important components that we need. It's the third most abundant compound in the human body. We don't get enough of it. It's been kept from us. It's the key to collagen production and tissue regeneration, because if we understand that we're quantum, we are light, we are this bioelectrical, I'm going to let her view, but we're basically the greatest bioelectrical computer ever created. And we know that computers need silicon microchips, right? We're the same. We're that same operating system. We're just biological in that manner. So we need silica. The importance is where you get it from. Research shows that clinoptilolite is the ideal and most bioavailable source of orthosilicic acid, which is bioavailable silica. So when you look at our molecular structure being 97% clino, 3% bentonite, the structure of the crystal in what we source is 66.7% silica, right? So if in the process of what we're doing, we use a process of cryogenic fracking, thermal shocks, phosphates, polarization, the addition of trace minerals, the ascorbic acid, to make the solution that and the structures of Cleanslate, the key is the 66.7% silica. So if we're fracking this crystal, right? So you have this honeycomb cage structure, and in process, we basically blow it up, right? So we're fracturing this larger structure, and you can think of this like having a log cabin, right? So if you have a log cabin, you put all these logs together, you put a roof on it, you have a log cabin, right? So that's the structure. You would see it and you say, okay, this is a log cabin. If you tear that structure apart, if you take the roof off, you take the logs, you set the logs aside, what do you have? You still have a log cabin? No, you have a bunch of logs. So by tearing apart or breaking apart that structure, we then are basically deconstructing this larger structure into its components. And if it's 66% silica, well, what did we just do? By actual process, we've just created bioavailable silica. Now, what is our source? We do it from clinoptilolite. So are we putting clinoptilolite in the bottle? No. What we've done is we've taken nature's best source of clinoptilolite, processed it, broke it apart. So by label claim, we're making silicon dioxide, because it's the hard part of putting an explanation on a label, because there are specific terms that we have to use for label claims to be compliant and to properly state what's in the product. But then you have process, right? We don't explain the entire process that we're going through on the label because, well, one, we don't have to, and two, it's too long.
I have another question. So, because originally there's aluminum in the zeolite,
yeah.
Do you have proof that you're taking out the aluminum before it's in the bottle?
No. So it's the important component when you look at molecular structure, right? With clino being a sodium aluminosilicate, much And you can look at this also and say, you know what? Hydrogen is highly unstable and flammable. So is oxygen, right? But when you bind them together, if you take 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen, you end up with water, which is what we're made of, which those bonds, those ionic bonds between those ions are extremely stable and solid, right? So when you're drinking water, you don't have to worry about spontaneously combusting because you just took 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen. And if you add it to a little heat, you might burst into flames. We don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
This is what makes Clino so special, is you have this very unique structure that is naturally created. And this is the key part of using naturally sourced clinoptilolite. So any company that's talking about using synthetic zeolites, they're great for the petroleum industry and playing with tires. You should never consume them because their structural strength is different. That naturally sourced clinoptilolite, because of the sodium and the aluminum and the silica bonds, they're very, very strong. It takes over 400 degrees and like 2% acidity, or pH of like 2%, a very acidic environment, and over 400 degrees over, I think it's over 48 hours of consistently being exposed in that environment to actually fracture the sodium and aluminum bonds. So it's something that you can ingest and you don't have to worry about the delivery of the aluminum that makes up the structure. Now,
so
there's
how
a
do
key
you separate
point.
the aluminum? Because if you separate the bonds and it's no longer all together with aluminum, silica, and the other bonds in the zeolite, and you have free floating aluminum in the
Correct.
end.
If you did that, and that's where the problem comes in, you don't want to do that. And that's the one thing that we don't do. And this is the problem. If you look at synthetic aluminosilicates, right? So as you'll hear a company like Cosiva, I'll just use them as for what they are. They have a product called TRS that would be great if you were making tires. But they have a synthetic aluminosilicate that they use. And if you do just a little bit of research into that, synthetic aluminosilicates have never been approved for human consumption. They're actually not safe for human consumption because of what you're talking about, that if you put them in a little bit of acid, like your stomach, the silica, the aluminum, and the sodium in that instance will actually break apart because the bonds are not strong, because it's not naturally created. When you look at clinoptilolite naturally, these crystals and clays are actually formed from volcanic eruption.
Yeah, I know, they don't get broken
They're
down.
forged in the fire of nature's most powerful, vessel, really. So the synthetic version is never going to be as strong as the natural source. So using naturally sourced clino, you can, and this is where when you look at powders, right? Because most people will go back and look at clinoptilolite and say, oh yeah, I've seen the powder before. Most people have seen clinoptilolite used in multiple sources, from kitty litter to kaopectate to maybe even getting a powder that you can ingest. It's safe for consumption. And if you remember Chernobyl, when Chernobyl melted down, and Ukraine's kind of in the news right now, so there's more conversations that the radiation from Ukraine is increasing, which is all a freaking joke. But when Ukraine had the Chernobyl meltdown initially, they were taking clinoptilolite powder and putting it in cookies, so kids and women could eat the cookies, that the powder could work in their gut to bind some of the radioactive isotopes that they were being exposed to. Natural clinoptilolite won't denature in the body because of its bonds and how it's structured. But natural clinoptilolite is also a sieve. It has the ability to grab onto and bind aluminum. So what you want to make sure that you're doing is not that you're destroying the structure itself, the sodium aluminosilicate structure. You want to make sure that you're cleaning out the binding sites that are holding on to any free aluminum. That is part of our process, and that's actually part of the testing that we do when we make the concentrate of the fragment solution. We have that tested for heavy metals to make sure that there's no free aluminum, that there's no mercury or like 1 part per billion of mercury, because you might not be able to get all of it out, but it's going to be so minuscule, it's less than you get in the air you're breathing right now. So you have the process, but I think the other part is actually understanding the component of it, that you don't need to fear the truth of how it works. And I think it's the important part also is the hype, because you have a lot of people like, oh, well, it's synthetic, it does this. No, understand the real molecular pathways, real biological pathways of how it'll function. But then with Cleanslate, it's also important to really comprehend that this is a product that is made by a biotech savant, that she's doing something that's never been done before. And we were talking with some colleagues about this earlier, that there's never been a product like this, and there will never be, and no one can ever duplicate what she's created, because they're not her. And the secret behind really what we're doing is not just the physical aspects of what this crystal is and what the silicate structure is and the trace minerals that we add and the ascorbic acid that we use and the polarization process that we use. It's the fact that we're taking nature's most powerful crystal, she's programming it with her intention, with harmonics, with a lot of quantum physics that enhances not just the physical component of being able to remove and deliver the trace minerals and deliver the silica, but the programming of what is being expressed to your cells, what's expressed energetically. And we've seen that through heart rate variability analysis. We've seen it through blood work. We're seeing it in a multitude of pathways. I mean, now Dr. Norbert Keshkesh, who's in Hungary, I guess he's got 5 more case studies on post-COVID patients, and he's got 5 new case studies that I think he's going to be introducing next week on heavy metal toxic patients and the excretion of metals, which is kind of profound. So you're doing good. I like these questions. I like the criticism. Let's go. You got more?
Can I just add quickly for my version of Cleanslate? It's like nature, what you guys have done. So you're using nature, but you've magnified it, because it's like Clayton and Christina have spent their entire lives for this one mission to create this beautiful thing. So it's not just nature, it's nature magnified. And these mad times, I feel that nature's not even enough, because we're bombarded by 1,000 things. We need these energy devices that are geniuses spend their entire life figuring out. It's really powerful. When I took my first drop, I was blown away by my first drop. I could feel it in my body, and I've done aged urine, all kinds of things, and it does something different to aged urine. I even spoke to Matt Hazen, you know, Clayton, yesterday, and he admits there's something different about it. He's got a good body feel. There's something about it that's really, really special, and I'm in love with it. I'm in love with the product, and I'm lifelong on it.
Yeah, and I think it's been the one thing for people of all different kinds. Like if you go on our YouTube channel and you look at the interview snippet that I have with Michael Jaco, you know, who's an ex-Navy SEAL, ex-Spec Ops, CIA. He's known as the cyborg because he's such a physical specimen with how he trains. And I mean, this is a guy that he's probably at the highest level of performance that most humans will ever attain. And he had contracted COVID last year and, you know, dealt with some of the consequences and stopped using all of his other supplements, just started using the Trinity. And, you know, to hear him talk about what his changes have been, and it's outstanding. So it's the matter of consistency, for one, right? That you can't just use something sporadically and expect to see, okay, I'm going to see some changes, especially when it comes to systemic detoxification and doing it properly. But you add in the energetic component, because Harry, you're dead on. It's a matter of really, really understanding you have what nature created, right? And we know that you want to be as whole as possible in most instances, right? With how you're working with stuff. So, and I'll use Relive as the best example because it really gets into that and then combining, whether it's through quantum nano emulsion processes that Christina's created to do a bunch of this stuff, but taking nature and extracting those components, but then amplifying what we've been provided, whether it's through process to make each ingredient more powerful or the strategic combination of ingredients to get them all synergistically to amplify, right? And Georgios, like you were talking about, it's like, oh, why don't I just use silica? Why don't I just use a silica product? Well, they're not all the same. And I'll give you the best example I can use is in Colombia, you have people that take coca leaves, right? They'll go take a coca leaf and they'll chew on it. And because if you do that, you'll get a little bit of a buzz. Then you have people that will take coca leaves, they'll get a bunch of them, they'll dry them, they'll grind them up, they'll put them in a little tea bag, and they'll make tea with those coca leaves. And that gives you a little bit of a boost, right? It's a little better than caffeine. But then you had somebody that figured out, hey, you know what, if we harvest a bunch of these coca leaves, we dry them out, maybe we use this little process that we figured out, we'll mash them up, we'll use some diesel fuel and a few different things, and then we'll smash it down, we'll dry it out, and then we have Peruvian marching powder, right? And we know that little white powdery substance is a whole hell of a lot more powerful than chewing on a couple leaves and making tea, right? And that's the difference of what we're doing. Now, granted, we're not using diesel fuel in what we do, and we're not. But when you look at the pathways and you understand the difference of what you can do with nature and functions and amplification of components of nature, that's it. And that's what makes Cleanslate unique. That's why it's different from everything else in the market. That's why the outcomes that we're seeing, and I think this is the important part, going back to your question on synthetic or natural. At the end of the day, if what we were using was all synthetic, just not, but what if it was all synthetic, but the outcomes that we were getting were so profound that everyone using it was seeing just outstanding improvements from babies to geriatrics and everything in between, but it was synthetic and not natural. Would it matter? No, because it's outcome based. We live in an outcome based environment. We don't get participation trophies in life, right? It's you're either performing or you're not.
I'm so glad you make that point. It's a very good point that you make. It's all about the results, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I made that post, because I didn't really get any results.
Yeah. And I think listening to what you were saying, it's a matter of consistency, right? Of saying, okay, let's follow a couple protocols. And because of what you're doing, and this is a teaching moment for everybody, because Harry and Sandy, and should we pull Jill and Shannon on here real quick too? Because they're like begging to jump in here.
Let's have a party.
But let me see, she's connecting, and let's see here. Shannon, I don't know if Shannon wants to join too. Oh, yeah. There, I accepted both of them. So I think the important part is then having the right protocol, but what I'm going to teach is also the importance of giving back and paying forward, right? Because the opportunity that we have here is a teaching moment, but it's also an opportunity to invest in someone else's health. And the reason I'm willing to do this is, Georgios, because of what you do, that if I can teach you properly and you can begin to see and understand what we're doing, because of what your clientele base is and the people that you're working with and who you're trying to serve, I'm going to be able to help you be better at what you do. And you've got, well, actually a few people here that are doing that. And I think Harry's one of the best guys at it because he was extremely skeptical initially. Took him months, kind of the same way.
I needed the free bottle from Sandy. I wouldn't even pay my money for it.
See, and I think this is the approach of, hey, look, you know what? I'm willing to invest in you if you're willing to invest in yourself, but then I also want your feedback. So
yeah, and when it comes to my feedback, to be honest, I'm not sure what you can teach me because I've been very, very heavy into detoxification for many years, and I've done all kinds of cleanses. Mainly,
no, this will be the fun part. This is
dry fasting and stuff like that. And when it comes to protocols and removing heavy metals, it's also very difficult to prove if your product is working or not, because the only proof that the people have at the end of the day is their own body, their own reactions to the product. And when someone asked me earlier about whether or not I did urine tests, I told the person urine tests are unreliable because every time you urinate, the results are completely different.
They are a little bit, but the interesting part with urine excretion analysis, and we actually do a lot of urine excretion analysis because I find it's more accurate than hair, but it's how you do it. I don't like provoke studies, right? I don't, when most people are, if you're working with a practitioner on urine excretion analysis, they want to do a provocation. So they'll use like DMPS or DMSA and, have someone take that, which is highly toxic in some instances, but they basically shake up the snow globe of the body and they force your body to move a bunch of metals around and then see what little bit the body can pee out, which is a horrible thing to do. But if you have an unprovoked baseline, so you have somebody doing what they're doing naturally, get up in the morning, pee in a cup, we can send that to the lab for analysis. We actually have a bunch of these being done right now. And Dr. Keshkesh has done a bunch of these as well. And then if you use Cleanslate, we usually do 3, 5, or 7 day difference in timing. Because if you have your baseline doing what you normally do, you're going to see that excretion, and then do a few days of Cleanslate use, and then do another collection without doing a massive jump and taking like 10 or 20 drops all at one time. Just consistently doing 3, 5 drops for a few days, and then doing another collection. When you see the disparity, if there's no other changes in lifestyle, right? You're not changing your diet you're not changing anything else you're doing. What we've seen, and everybody's variable, right? Because one, you have how the body's responding, but you also have different aspects of where the body's going to focus removing toxins from. We've seen 600% increases in excretion of arsenic in some instances, massive releases of mercury. That mercury typically won't come out on its own. You can't get it out. It won't leave. And watching it come out passively without the negative effects, because if you are doing stuff that flushes a lot of mercury and you're not binding it, it can cause a bunch of issues. So you see different aspects of clinical analysis. Dr. Stefan Rau, who's in Frankfurt, Germany, does a lot with heart rate variability because he's got the Nillis and the Rofus device that measure a massive amount of components with heart rate variability, and looking at biological age and a whole host of metrics, and seeing those shifts not just in a couple of days but in minutes. So, but it also goes back into, like you said, looking at yourself, taking your baseline, making notes, just like you were talking about when you're working with someone with astrology and past life or stress work. Great. What have you dealt with? Where did you come from? What have you been doing? What are your symptoms? How do you function currently? Start this process, and then journaling, and then tracking. And the one thing, that we're seeing a lot of now is photos of eyes, but also talking and doing a video of just talking through how you feel, how you function, because you see the changes. And that's the part I'll challenge you to. So, and I'm going to invest in it. Shanna, Jill, since you guys hopped on here, you got any feedback? No, they just wanted to hang out. They're wearing headphones and just chilling.
I would add, Georgios, I'm thinking out loud. If you really want the definitive truth of Cleanslate for you, if you go on a dry fast and you take nothing but Cleanslate, I think Ken Newbill did this once, and he found a dry fast is obviously, we know, very powerful, and you just add nothing else but Cleanslate, you're going to pull faster because you know your body, Georgios. You know what a dry fast 3 or 4 days does. Do nothing but Cleanslate. You let me know if you're going to pull out more mucus, more shit, and more crap after that. That'll be definitive proof. Game over. You'll know after that one.
Yeah, that's the best way to test it. I haven't really done that like that because
So let's have some fun.
didn't drive us much.
And you can play with the dosage. I mean, I'm not going to push you and say, you know what, just go big or go home and start with 10 drops twice a day and do it for a few weeks while you're doing it. But if you wanted an experience and then pop a couple 0 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, you can even go 1 in the evening, you know, before you go to bed, you'll know. You'll have an experience. And I think like what you're talking about, you know, sourcing, you know, the quality of greens and herbs and such, a lot of the ingredients you were talking about initially are right in here. And it's the ideal sources, but no fillers, right? Because with this amazing little greens combination, you only need a teaspoon, not scoops, because there's no fillers, no fluff. So,
you know, I had a question about Harry's book, because Harry wrote a book on Cleanslate, right?
I did. He was the first author to do it. I think he peed all over it.
So because you're working with Clayton Thomas together, and obviously if you write a whole book on it, you mention also the process and how it works in the body in the book. So did you get any help by writing the book, or did you just write it on yourself?
That was all Harry. He didn't even consult with me. And if you read the book, he didn't even spell my name right.
Oh, but to be honest,
so
it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me with Harry, to be honest.
Yeah,
I jumped on late, you guys. What is the main question? See if I can help out.
No,
I was just curious about Harry's book, like if he wrote it alone or not, because he wrote the whole book on it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's the big part is most of the stuff Harry does, he's alone. But I think it's the important part of, like we're talking about here, is the opportunity for people to be able to put together their own experiences, right? And when he told me he was going to write a book on it, but he didn't give me any insight, you know, didn't ask me to review it. We didn't have anybody here review it. When he sent me some of the first pages, I'm like, you didn't even give me proper credit. You didn't spell my name right. I'm like, man, that's just disrespectful. But you know, I think the important part, especially from our foundation with Root, we have 4 principles that we function on: education, which we're heavy on; authenticity, which is important because you just got to be who you are; the simplicity, which kind of goes into some of your questions about process and taking something really complex and simplifying it; but then the integrity part, and that's the part we're completely uncompromising on, you know. And I think that's the one thing that, like you're hitting on, if somebody's got negative things to say, great, let's go, you know. But I think the ability to talk through them and figure things out, and I mean, if we were doing something wrong or something wasn't working, we're going to identify it and we're going to fix it. But like in this instance, just to find out where the gaps are and see that there's maybe an opportunity to do a lot more good.
Can I challenge you?
Oh, absolutely.
Because you're such a good talker. Like, you talk really a lot. Like, you're really convincing with the way you talk, because you know all the things from the back of your head. So I was wondering what happened between you and the company Metron Nutraceuticals, because I know I shouldn't probably bring this up at all.
Oh no,
but
it's a great. You know what? It's
I
perfect.
research everything about clean
Yeah.
slate when I research into
So
it.
Harry actually did an interview with me on this, and it's the fun part. Do you want the truth or do you want the story that comes out of Ohio?
No, I just want your version.
So I was